Absolutely. Here's an emotionally compelling 600-word expansion of that keynote, delivered in a thoughtful, story-driven tone. It maintains a clear, logical flow, is highly relatable, and mirrors the speaking style you're aiming for. Toxic people don't show up wearing a label. They walk into your life wearing confidence, charm, or even vulnerability. But somewhere along the way, you start to feel smaller in their presence, less certain, drained. And when that happens, our first instinct is to fight back, to defend ourselves, to prove we're right. We think that if we can win the argument, we can win back our peace. But smart people, people with real emotional clarity, they don't try to win, they try to understand. Because here's the truth. Toxic people often aren't trying to hurt you for the sake of being cruel. They're trying to soothe something broken inside themselves. That doesn't make their behavior okay, but it does make it easier to respond with wisdom instead of war. I remember a woman named Emma Sharp, accomplished, calm under pressure. She was a senior manager at a tech company that moved at the speed of thought. Every week she had to pitch strategies in team meetings, and every week there was one person, Rick, who interrupted, undermined, and rolled his eyes at every idea she presented. Not overtly enough to be called out for it, but just enough that the room would shift when he spoke. A subtle sabotage. Most of us in her shoes might have lost our cool, called him out in front of the team, maybe escalated it to HR. But Emma, she chose a different path. She waited until the meeting was over. She found Rick in the hallway and asked if they could talk. No hostility, no tension, just curiosity. Rick, she said, I've noticed some friction between us in meetings. I might be misreading it, but I'd really like to understand what's going on. Now, that could have gone a dozen different ways. He could have deflected, he could have denied it, but something about the way Emma asked the question, open, honest, without agenda, disarmed him. And what he said changed everything. He told her that he'd been feeling out of place ever since she joined the team, that her sharpness made him feel irrelevant, that every time she spoke, he felt like the spotlight moved away from him. He wasn't trying to be difficult, he was just trying to be seen. That doesn't justify how he treated her, but it explains it. And in understanding that, Emma saw the whole situation differently. She didn't excuse the behavior, but she stopped making it about her. And that shift from personal offense to deeper understanding changed the dynamic completely. Because here's the thing, when we try to win with toxic people, we're playing their game, and their game is rigged. They want control, they want chaos, they want to provoke a reaction that justifies their story about us. But when we choose curiosity over judgment, something powerful happens. We create space. Space for truth, for accountability, and sometimes even for healing. It takes strength to stay calm when someone's trying to trigger you. It takes real confidence to say, I want to understand, when everything in you wants to say, you're wrong. But smart people know that understanding doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. We don't have to invite toxic behavior, but if we want to lead, not just react, we have to learn to look beyond the behavior and ask, what's this really about? Because the goal isn't to win the moment, the goal is to grow past it. And that begins when we stop reacting and start listening. There's a common belief that kindness means saying yes. That being a good person means always being available, always understanding, always forgiving. But smart people know that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's self-betrayal. And when you're around toxic people, people who test your patience, blur your limits, and drain your energy, setting clear boundaries isn't just wise, it's vital. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're not punishments. They're not silent treatments. Boundaries are how we teach people how to treat us. They are not walls built out of fear. They are doors with locks, and we decide who has the key when and under what conditions. I once met a woman named Clara. She was the go-to person in her family, the fixer, the one who dropped everything for everyone else. But there was one sibling, her older brother, who constantly manipulated her generosity. He'd call in the middle of the night for money, expecting her to bail him out of another bad decision. He'd show up at her door unannounced, stay for days, then leave chaos in his wake. Every time she said no, he'd guilt her, "You're all I have." And so she'd say yes. But Clara started getting sick, migraines, panic attacks, sleep that never felt restful. And when she finally spoke to a therapist, she heard something that stopped her cold. Every time you say yes to him, you're saying no to yourself. That moment changed her. The next time her brother called asking for money, she took a breath and said, I love you, but I won't be sending money this time. I'm here to support you emotionally, but I can't continue rescuing you financially. It's not healthy for either of us. Because he didn't take it well. Toxic people rarely do when they lose control, but Clara didn't budge. Not because she didn't care, but because she cared enough to stop enabling him and cared enough about herself to stop abandoning her own well-being. That's what smart people understand. Boundaries are not about being mean. They're about being honest with others, with ourselves. And here's the most powerful part. You can be firm and kind. You can say no with love. You can disagree without disrespect. Sometimes we're afraid to set boundaries because we don't want to lose people. But the people who truly care about you will respect the limits you put in place. And the ones who don't, that's a kind of clarity too. We live in a world that glorifies being always on, always available. But the cost of that is exhaustion, resentment, and disconnection from ourselves and from the people we want to love in a healthy way. There's research, real data-backed research, that shows people who struggle to set boundaries are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and burnout, not because they're weak, but because they're carrying more than their share, more than what's fair, more than what their nervous systems were designed to handle. Smart people learn that protecting their peace is not selfish, it's sacred. They say things like, let's take a pause, or I'm happy to continue this conversation when it can be respectful, or I care about this relationship, which is why I need some space. They don't ghost, they don't gossip, they don't play games. They communicate, not perfectly, but courageously and consistently. Because the goal is not to control others, it's to stay in control of yourself. It's to preserve your energy for the people and moments that matter most. And when you start setting boundaries with clarity and kindness, something incredible happens. The people who belong in your life step closer, and the people who don't slowly drift away. And in that space, you find something you didn't even know you were missing: freedom. There's a painful trick that toxic people use, and it's one that works surprisingly well, especially on those of us who care. They twist things just enough to make you question yourself. They don't attack directly, not always. Instead, they leave little emotional bruises, a passive-aggressive comment, a sarcastic jab disguised as humor, a backhanded compliment. And slowly, without realizing it, you start to wonder if maybe you are the problem, if maybe you're too sensitive, too emotional, too much. But smart people, those who've done the inner work, who understand the difference between reflection and projection, they don't fall for that trap. They know something that can change the way you carry yourself in any toxic environment. What someone says about you usually says a whole lot more about them than it ever will about you. I remember a woman named Jordan. She was a passionate, dedicated teacher at a middle school. She showed up early, stayed late, poured everything she had into her students. And for the most part, the parents appreciated her. But there was one, just one, who seemed to be on a mission to tear her down. This parent would send long, angry emails about how Jordan didn't care enough, how her teaching lacked structure, how she was making things personal. There were voicemails too, accusatory, bitter, sometimes even yelling. And eventually the complaints went public, posted on parent forums, whispered in PTA meetings, and got to the point where Jordan started second-guessing herself in class. Was she being too harsh? Too lenient, too quiet, too assertive? She was unraveling until she did something surprisingly simple. She started keeping a journal, but not the kind full of feelings or daily recaps. She called it her reality check journal. Every time she received criticism, she wrote down 3 things: what was actually said, what she knew to be objectively true, what might be projection, and patterns started to emerge. The parent who accused her of being emotionally unavailable was in the middle of a custody battle and had publicly admitted to being overwhelmed. The complaint about her favoring certain students always followed days when her child didn't get special attention. Over and over again, Jordan saw that the anger being thrown at her wasn't born from truth. It was born from fear, frustration, and personal pain that had nothing to do with her. She didn't respond with retaliation. She didn't try to win the argument. She just stopped carrying what was never hers to hold. And in doing so, she reclaimed her confidence, not from praise, but from clarity. That's what smart people do. They learn to separate what is real from what is projected. They pause before absorbing an insult. They ask themselves, is this about me, or is this about what the other person is dealing with? Because when you personalize every toxic comment, you allow other people to write your story. And that's a dangerous thing to give away, your narrative, your truth, your self-worth. There's a line I heard once that stuck with me. Don't let someone in a bad place put you in a bad place. Because that's the work, not to ignore everything or pretend it doesn't hurt, but to build enough inner clarity that you don't collapse every time someone throws shade. Not everyone will like you. Some will misunderstand you on purpose. Some will never give you the benefit of the doubt. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of their wounds. You can't stop people from projecting their pain, but you can stop yourself from absorbing it. And once you do that, you begin to see the truth. Toxic people don't get to define who you are. You do. Toxic people want a reaction. That's the fuel they run on. They poke, they prod, they stir the pot, because if they can get you to explode, to lash out, to become just like them, then they've won. Now they can say, see, you're no better than me. And in that moment, your credibility, your influence, your integrity, they all take a hit. That's why smart people choose a different path. They don't match fire with fire. They don't shout louder to be heard. They lead by example, not by reaction. Now, that doesn't mean they stay silent. It doesn't mean they let themselves be walked on, but it does mean they operate from a place of values, not emotions, because emotions come and go and values stay. When someone is being cruel or manipulative or loud, it's tempting to respond in kind. It feels fair, it feels justified, but it never ends well. You don't teach someone about kindness by being cruel back. You don't create understanding by attacking. Smart people understand this. They know that who you are in moments of pressure reveals who you really are, not who you pretend to be. I remember a story about a woman who worked in corporate communications. Her name was Leah. She was sharp, composed, respected. But one day, a colleague, someone who felt threatened by her success, started spreading rumors behind her back, nasty ones, professional sabotage mixed with personal attacks. People told Leah what was being said. She could have gone straight to HR. She could have confronted this person in front of everyone, but she didn't. She stayed focused. She kept showing up, doing the work, and treating that same colleague with decency, not fake kindness, genuine professionalism. When someone asked her why she wasn't fighting back, she said, because I want people to remember how I handled this more than what was said about me. Weeks went by, and something powerful happened. The people around her started to notice the contrast. The lies didn't stick. The respect for Leah only grew, not because she shouted, but because she didn't have to. She let her character speak louder than the chaos. That's what leading by example looks like. It's not weak, it's not passive, it's power under control. It's responding with calm when someone tries to provoke you. It's choosing the high road, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Think back to the moment Michelle Obama was being attacked during the 2016 campaign. It wasn't just political criticism, it was deeply personal. And when the world waited to see how she'd respond, she said something unforgettable. When they go low, we go high. That wasn't just poetic, it was a decision, a declaration. And it showed millions of people what strength really looks like. You don't need to prove yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to defend your name in every room you're not in. What you need is the discipline to stay aligned with who you are, even when everything around you is trying to pull you away from that. Smart people know that reacting to toxicity with more toxicity just spreads the infection. But responding with grace, that's where real influence begins. That's how trust is built. That's how you shift the culture, not just survive it. People are always watching, not your words, but your choices, especially in moments of pressure. And when they see you lead with calm, with clarity, with unwavering integrity, you give them permission to do the same. You show them there's another way, a better way. And that ripple is more powerful than any reaction. One of the most difficult things we'll ever have to do in life is walk away from someone we care about. It goes against our instincts. We're taught to fight for relationships, to give people second chances, to be loyal, sometimes to a fault. But there comes a point where loyalty to others starts to cost you loyalty to yourself. And smart people know where that line is. They know when a relationship is no longer serving growth, peace, or mutual respect. And they have the courage to do what so many of us avoid. They walk away. It doesn't mean they're heartless. It doesn't mean they didn't try. It means they finally saw that staying was doing more harm than leaving ever could. I remember a man named Daniel. He had been in a friendship since college, 15 years. And on the surface, it looked unbreakable. But beneath it, there was tension, manipulation, passive control. Every time Daniel achieved something, his friend found a way to minimize it. Whenever Daniel opened up, his vulnerability was met with sarcasm or silence. He started to feel small, unsure, like he had to filter himself just to keep the peace. But for years he stayed, because of history, because of shared memories, because of guilt. Until one day, after yet another conversation that left him feeling emotionally depleted, he asked himself a question he had never had the courage to ask before. If I met this person today, would I choose them? And the answer was no. It broke his heart, but it opened his life. He didn't burn the bridge. He didn't leave with anger. He just stopped watering a plant that refused to grow. And within weeks, he felt lighter. He started reconnecting with parts of himself he hadn't seen in years, confidence, clarity, even creativity. And what surprised him the most wasn't how painful walking away was. It was how peaceful it felt to finally stop betraying himself. There's a study, real research, not just theory, that found people who end toxic relationships experience a significant improvement in their emotional well-being and decision-making within just 3 months. Not years, not decades, months. That's the power of letting go of what weighs you down. But we hold on, don't we? We tell ourselves it will get better, that we're overreacting, that they didn't mean it, that maybe we're the problem, and we wait. And we shrink, and we ache, and somehow that becomes normal. But it's not normal, it's just familiar, and familiarity isn't the same as belonging. Walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're done abandoning yourself. It means you've decided that your peace matters more than your fear of being alone. It means you've outgrown the version of yourself who thought love had to hurt or that loyalty meant suffering. If you're holding on to a connection that constantly leaves you questioning your worth, ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I let go? And then just as importantly, ask yourself, what might become possible if I do? Because when you stop trying to fix what's unwilling to be fixed, you make space for something greater, healthier friendships, truer love, real respect, not just from others, but from yourself. It's not giving up, it's growing up. It's the moment you choose to protect your future instead of preserving a broken past. And sometimes that's the bravest thing you'll ever do. Let me leave you with this. Toxic people will enter your life dressed in many forms. Some come as colleagues, some as friends, some as partners or even family. And sometimes the hardest part isn't recognizing who's toxic, it's accepting that we can't change them. That no matter how much grace we offer, no matter how much understanding we bring to the table, there are people who will choose chaos over peace, control over respect, and ego over connection. And that's not your fault. But how you respond, that part is yours. That's the space where your character is revealed. That's the moment where your emotional intelligence becomes your compass, because responding well to toxic people isn't about winning an argument, proving your point, or showing them who's boss. It's about preserving your integrity when someone else is trying to drag you into their dysfunction. That's where real strength lives, not in reaction, but in restraint, not in noise, but in clarity. You don't have to mirror someone's dysfunction just because they handed it to you. You don't have to absorb their bitterness, carry their anger, or play by their rules. You get to choose. And that choice, it changes everything. You can respond with compassion, because compassion doesn't mean weakness. It means understanding that someone's bad behavior often comes from pain they haven't addressed. You can respond with calm, because staying grounded when someone is trying to rattle you is one of the most powerful moves you can make. You can respond with boundaries, clear, firm, and kind, because you're not required to be a dumping ground for someone else's issues. You can choose to walk away not because you don't care, but because you finally do about yourself. It's easy to believe that being smart is about knowing more than others, but the truth is being smart, really smart, is about knowing yourself. It's about knowing what you will and won't tolerate, what energy you allow in your life, what peace you refuse to sacrifice. It's about choosing better, not louder, wiser, not harsher. There will be times when you're tempted to react, when someone pushes just the right button and you feel that familiar heat rise in your chest. You'll want to fire back, defend yourself, or walk into the emotional arena and go 10 rounds. But take a breath, pause, and remember that not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every invitation to drama needs to be accepted. Smart people live with intention. They know that life is too short and too precious to spend on people who only want to take. So they choose to respond, not react. They choose to hold their power, not give it away. They choose to rise again and again, even when it would be easier to sink to the same level as the person trying to pull them down. You don't need to fix anyone. That's not your job. But you do get to decide how you show up, how you protect your peace, how you lead your life with courage and clarity and care. Treat people with compassion, but never at the cost of your own emotional safety. Set boundaries without bitterness or apology. Stay curious, but not at the expense of your dignity. And when the time comes to walk away, do it with your head high and your heart intact, not because you lost, but because you finally learned to choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, being smart isn't about knowing more. It's about choosing better. Thank you.